Sterling Morrison's carriage pulled up to his Montana ranch house on Christmas Eve, wheels crunching through fresh snow. 3 years he'd been gone, building an empire across the territories. Now lamplight glowed from every window of the grand house he'd bought but never lived in. He stepped down, straightening his expensive coat. Success hung on him like armor-tailored wool, polished boots, the smell of cigar smoke and train compartments. Inside that house waited his children. His heart hammered against his ribs. The front door opened. A woman appeared young, maybe 30, with dark hair pinned neat and a gray dress that spoke of practicality over fashion. The governess, Miss Catherine Wells. Behind her stood 2 children, positioned like sentries in the formal foyer. Emma was 10 now, James 8. Sterling hadn't seen them since James was barely walking. They'd grown into strangers, Emma tall and serious, James with his mother's eyes. Both wore fine clothes, their hair brushed to gleaming. Catherine descended the steps first. "Mr. Morrison," she said, her voice calm and clear. "Welcome home." "Miss Wells." He nodded, unable to look away from the children. Catherine turned, her hand gentle on Emma's shoulder. "Children, greet our guest." Emma curtsied perfectly. "Good evening. Mr. Morrison, welcome to our home." James bowed, his small face solemn. "We hope you had a pleasant journey. Sir." The words hit Sterling like fists. "Guest, sir." They spoke to him the way they'd speak to any traveling businessman. He searched their eyes for recognition and found only polite blankness. His voice caught. He cleared his throat. "Thank you. The journey was long." "Miss Catherine says you've come from back east," Emma offered, her tone bright with rehearsed hospitality. "Is that where you conduct your business?" Catherine's hand tightened on Emma's shoulder. Her eyes met Sterling's over the children's heads. In them he saw pity and something harder judgment. Maybe she knew exactly what was happening. "Children, why don't you show Mr. Morrison to the parlor?" Catherine's voice stayed even. "I'll bring tea." They escorted him inside like palace attendants guiding royalty. Emma took his coat with careful hands. James gestured to the parlor where a fire burned bright. Their movements were choreographed, flawless. Someone had trained them well in hospitality. Not him. Never him. Sterling sank into a leather chair while the children stood waiting, uncertain what to do with this stranger. The house smelled of pine boughs and cinnamon. Christmas greenery decorated every surface. Catherine had made this a home. He'd only paid for it. "Do you know our father, Sir?" James asked suddenly. "Does he send word?" The question destroyed him. Sterling gripped the chair arm so hard his knuckles went white. Catherine appeared in the doorway with a tea tray, her face carefully blank. "James, Emma," she said softly. "Perhaps Mr. Morrison would like to rest before dinner." But Emma stepped closer, curious now. "How long will the gentleman be staying?" "Miss Catherine." Sterling heard the question from where he sat. The gentleman. His own daughter asking the governess how long the gentleman would be staying in his own house. In that moment, he understood the magnitude of his failure. He'd built an empire. He'd lost his children. Christmas dinner proved exquisite torture. Catherine had set the formal dining room with china. Sterling didn't recognize, and silver he'd probably paid for but never seen. Candles flickered down the long table. A feast worthy of the holiday covered every surface: roasted goose, potatoes, winter vegetables preserved from Catherine's garden. The children sat across from him, back straight, napkins in laps, perfect manners. Catherine sat at the far end, watching everything with those calm, assessing eyes. "The food is wonderful," Sterling managed. "My compliments to the cook." "Miss Catherine made it," Emma said proudly. "She makes everything. She's teaching me to bake bread." Of course she was. Catherine wasn't just raising his children, she was doing everything. Mother, teacher, cook, guardian, everything he should have been and wasn't. That's very kind of her. Sterling said, "Miss Catherine is the kindest person in the whole territory," James declared. He looked at Catherine with pure adoration. "She reads to us every night, and she knows all the best hymns. Does she—" Sterling's throat felt tight. Emma nodded enthusiastically. "She taught me, 'Come Thou Fount.' And I can sing all 4 verses now. Would you like to hear, 'Perhaps After Dinner'?" Catherine interjected gently. "Let Mr. Morrison eat." The children returned to their food, but Emma kept glancing at Sterling with friendly curiosity. To her, he was an interesting visitor, someone to practice hospitality on, someone who might have news from the wider world. Not her father. Never her father. "What business brings you west, sir?" Emma asked. "Most of Father's associates travel during spring and fall, not winter." Sterling set down his fork. "I'm not—" He stopped. Tried again. "I came for Christmas." "How lovely." Emma smiled. "Do you have family nearby?" He couldn't breathe. Catherine's face had gone pale. She understood what this was costing him, but she said nothing. Let him drown in it. Maybe he deserved to drown. "Emma," James said, "didn't you want to show Mr. Morrison your arithmetic? You're the best in your class." "Oh, yes," Emma brightened. "Miss Catherine says I might study advanced mathematics when I'm older. She says women can be just as clever as men, maybe more so." "Miss Catherine is very wise," Sterling said quietly. They talked through the rest of dinner about their lessons, their friends in town, the new foal in the barn, Catherine's plan for a spring garden. Every sentence reinforced the same truth: Catherine was their world. She'd filled every space he'd left empty. Finally, Sterling couldn't bear it. He pushed back from the table, chairs scraping loud in the quiet room. 3 faces turned to him, startled. "I need to—" His voice shook. He looked at his children, really looked at them. "You don't know who I am, do you?" Emma glanced at Catherine, confused. James frowned. "I'm your father," Sterling said. The words came out broken. "I've been gone 3 years. I've failed you. Our father." Emma's eyes went wide. She looked to Catherine for confirmation. "Our real father." James stared, his mouth opening and closing. "But you look like you're just—" "I know." Sterling sank back into his chair. "I'm a stranger to you? That's my fault? All my fault?" The silence stretched unbearable. Then Catherine rose, moving to the children with quiet grace. She rested her hands on their shoulders. "It's true," she said softly. "This is your father. He's come home." Emma looked up at her, eyes filling with tears. "Why didn't you tell us? I wanted him to tell you himself." James turned to Sterling, his young face confused and hurt. "Where were you?" The question hung in the candlelight. Sterling had no answer that would make it right. No excuse that would heal 3 years of absence. He sat there, broken. While his children looked at the stranger who claimed to be their father, Catherine took the children to her room after dinner, her arm around Emma's shoulders, her hand gentle on James's back. Sterling stood in the hallway, listening to their voices through the door. "Your mother died when James was just a baby," Catherine was saying. Her voice stayed gentle but honest. "Your father loved her very much when she passed. His heart broke. Some people, when they grieve, they run. They throw themselves into work, into building things, into anything that keeps them from feeling the pain. So he left us." Emma's voice trembled. "He made a choice he regrets now. He thought providing for you meant building an empire, making money, securing your future. He didn't understand that what you needed was him." Sterling pressed his forehead against the wall. She was explaining him better than he could explain himself, giving his children context without excusing his failures. "Does he love us?" James asked. So quiet, Sterling almost missed it. Yes, Catherine said without hesitation. He loves you. He just forgot how to show it. He forgot that love is presence, not presence. He forgot that children need their father's time more than his money. A long pause. Then Emma. Do you think he'll leave again? I don't know, Catherine admitted, but I think he wants to try. I think he's finally ready to be your father. Sterling moved away from the door, his eyes burning. He went to his study, the one room in this house he'd actually used on his rare visits, and stared at the ledgers showing his expanding holdings, acres and acres, cattle by the thousands, investments across 3 territories. All of it meaningless compared to what he'd heard through that door. An hour later, Catherine found him there. She didn't knock, just entered and closed the door behind her. Her gray dress was rumpled now, her hair slightly loose. She looked exhausted. They're sleeping, she said. Finally, thank you. He couldn't look at her. For what you said. For not. I told them the truth. Mr. Morrison, nothing more. Sterling, he said. Please, call me Sterling. She inclined her head slightly. They stood in silence, the lamplight casting shadows across the room. I need your help, Sterling said finally. The words cost him everything. I don't know how to be their father. You've done everything right. You've loved them, raised them, given them everything I should have given. I'm asking. He swallowed hard. Teach me, please. Catherine studied him for a long moment. Her dark eyes saw too much, understood too well. It won't be easy, she said. They won't trust you right away. You can't buy their love with gifts or grand gestures. You have to show up. Every day. For breakfast. For lessons. For bedtime stories. You have to learn who they are. What Emma fears. What makes James laugh. Their favorite hymns and foods and games. You have to become someone they can rely on. I'll do it. He meant it. Whatever it takes. You'll have to stay. Not for a week or a month. Stay. No more running. I'll stay. Catherine nodded slowly. Then I'll help you. But know this, if you hurt them again, if you make promises and break them, I won't forgive you. They might. Children are merciful. But I won't. I understand. She moved to leave, then paused at the door. Their mother's name was Sarah. Emma doesn't remember her, but James sometimes asks about her. I tell him stories, the ones you told me in your letters, back when you still wrote. I've kept her alive for them. You should know that. After she left. Sterling sat in the darkness for a long time. Through his window, he could see Catherine's room, her lamp burning late into the night. That steady light had kept his family alive while he'd been chasing shadows. Tomorrow, he would start learning to be a father. Tonight, he simply sat with his failure, letting it break him open, preparing for the hard work of rebuilding what he'd destroyed. January brought bitter cold and new routines. Sterling joined breakfast every morning, sitting at the table while Catherine served oatmeal and eggs. The first week, the children barely spoke to him. They ate quickly and excused themselves. Fleeing to Catherine's side for morning lessons, Sterling followed. He set up a chair in the back of the schoolroom, really just the sun-filled parlor where Catherine had created learning space. He sat there like a student himself, watching her teach. She was remarkable. Patient when Emma struggled with fractions, encouraging when James's handwriting wobbled across the slate. She made history come alive with stories, turned arithmetic into games. The children adored her. Their faces lit up when she praised them. Sterling took notes, watched how she asked follow-up questions, how she remembered tiny details about their interests, how she corrected gently without crushing spirits. One morning in late January, he tried making breakfast. Catherine found him in the kitchen, smoke rising from burned oatmeal, his face sheepish. I thought, he gestured helplessly at the ruined pot. Emma hates oatmeal, Catherine said. moving past him to crack eggs into a pan. She tolerates it when I make it, but she prefers eggs. James likes oatmeal, but only with honey and cinnamon. Sterling felt his face fall. These were things fathers should know. Basic things. Catherine glanced at him, and her expression softened. You tried. That matters. Does it? More than you know. She handed him a whisk. Here. Beat these eggs. I'll teach you. They worked side by side in the kitchen, Catherine showing him how to cook eggs the way Emma liked them soft, with butter and salt. When the children came down for breakfast, they found their father serving plates with his own hands. Emma stared at her eggs. James looked at Catherine for guidance. Your father made breakfast, Catherine said calmly. Tell him thank you. Thank you, they chorused, uncertain. Sterling sat with them, watching Emma take a cautious bite. Her eyes widened slightly. She took another bite, then another. James dug into his oatmeal. Sterling had remembered the honey and cinnamon. It was a small thing, eggs and oatmeal. But Emma looked at him differently afterward. Not like a stranger. Maybe like someone trying. February brought thaw and tentative progress. Sterling learned that Emma collected pressed flowers, that James drew pictures of horses constantly. He joined their afternoon walks with Catherine, listening more than talking. He discovered Emma had a friend named Sarah in town who talked too much. James was afraid of the barn cat. One evening, James brought his favorite toy soldier to the parlor. It's broken, he said, holding it out not to Catherine but to Sterling. The arm came off. Sterling took the wooden soldier carefully. It was well worn, obviously beloved. The arm had snapped clean at the shoulder. I might be able to fix it, he said. May I try? James nodded. Sterling worked while James watched, finding glue, fitting the tiny arm back into place, holding it steady while the glue dried. Catherine sat nearby with Emma, pretending to read but watching everything. When Sterling handed the soldier back, arm reattached, James cradled it like treasure. Then he smiled, the first real smile Sterling had seen from his son. Thank you, James whispered. You're welcome. That night, Catherine found Sterling in the hallway. He trusted you with something he loves, she said quietly. That's progress. Sterling looked at his hands, still sticky with glue. I'm learning, he said. Yes. Catherine agreed. You are, in her eyes. Sterling saw something beyond judgment, not quite approval, but acknowledgement. He was showing up, trying, learning who his children were, one small moment at a time. Outside, snow still covered the ground, but inside, something was thawing. Slowly, carefully, like spring approaching from a long distance. Architected emotional midpoint chapter, emphasizing growth, consistency, and deepening romantic connection. I need to write chapter 5, target 565,615 words. This is the emotional midpoint where Sterling learns from Catherine's wisdom. Bonds deepen, and he begins to fall in love with her. Key moment is Catherine teaching him. Children don't need perfection. They need consistency. March brought longer days and Catherine's intentional lessons in fatherhood. She didn't just model good parenting, she explained it, walking Sterling through the why behind every choice. Children don't need perfection. She told him one evening after the children had gone to bed. They need consistency. Show up. Listen to what they tell you. Remember the details. Ask follow-up questions. Sterling watched her darn James's socks by lamplight, her hands steady and sure. Everything she did carried that same quiet competence. Emma told you about her friend Sarah yesterday. Catherine continued. Today. You asked how Sarah was doing. Emma's face lit up. That's what matters, you remembered. You cared enough to ask again. You make it sound simple. It is simple. It's just not easy. She set down the sock, meeting his eyes. Parenting is 1,000 small choices. Choosing to be present over distracted. Choosing to listen over lecture. Choosing to remember over forget. You're making those choices now. That's what they need. Sterling had never met anyone like Catherine Wells. She taught school lessons each morning reading, arithmetic, history, geography, but layered into every lesson was something deeper. Kindness, courage, faith in things unseen. He heard her singing hymns while she washed dishes, her voice clear and true. Watched her correct the children with gentleness that never diminished them. Saw her love poured out in pressed dresses and hot meals and patient answers to endless questions. She worked from before dawn until after dark, and Sterling had never seen her complain, never seen her flag. She simply gave and gave and gave. One afternoon, Sterling sat with Emma during her arithmetic lesson. Catherine had shown him how to help without simply giving answers. Ask questions. Let Emma work toward solutions herself. If we have 12 eggs, Emma read from her slate, and we use 4 for breakfast, how many remain? How would you solve it? Sterling asked, echoing Catherine's teaching method. Emma thought, her brow furrowed in concentration. I could draw 12 marks and cross out 4. That would work. She drew carefully, counting under her breath. 8, she said triumphantly. 8 eggs remain. Well done. Sterling felt absurdly proud. Emma beamed, then spontaneously. She reached for his hand. You're getting better at this. Father. Father, not Papa yet, but not Mr. Morrison either. Progress. That evening, Emma asked if Sterling would braid her hair for bed. Catherine usually did it, but Emma wanted him to try. His first attempt proved disastrous, lumpy, crooked, falling apart immediately. Emma giggled. James laughed outright. Sterling felt his face heat with embarrassment, but Catherine smiled. Try again, she said. Here, let me show you. She stood behind him, her hands guiding his through the motions, over, under, pull tight. Her fingers were warm, her voice patient. Sterling concentrated on the braid, but he was intensely aware of her closeness, her gentle instruction, the way she smelled of lavender and bread dough. When he finished better this time, though still imperfect, Emma hugged him. Just briefly, then pulled away, shy. But she'd done it. After the children slept, Sterling found Catherine in the kitchen preparing tomorrow's bread. Lamplight turned her hair to copper. She kneaded dough with strong, capable hands. Thank you, he said, for teaching me, for everything you've done for them, for... He stopped, overwhelmed. Catherine looked up. You're doing well, Sterling. Truly. They're beginning to trust you. Because of you. Because you're showing up. Because you're trying. She dusted flour from her hands. That's all any parent can do. Try, stay. Love them through the hard parts. Sterling understood then what he'd been afraid to acknowledge. He was falling in love with Catherine Wells. Not just grateful genuinely, deeply in love, with her strength, her grace, her infinite capacity for love. But he said nothing. He didn't deserve to speak it. Not yet. Not while he was still earning the right to be in his children's lives. So he simply nodded and left her to her bread, carrying the secret of his love like a candle flame cupped in his hands. April arrived with telegram trouble. Sterling found it on his desk one morning, urgent message from his business partner. Foreclosure threats on the Eastern holdings. Investors demanding his presence. Crisis that required immediate travel. He stared at the paper, heart sinking. Everything he'd built back east was crumbling. Decisions needed to be made, properties salvaged, partnerships renegotiated. The old Sterling would have left on the next train. But that was before Christmas dinner. Before learning Emma's favorite color was yellow. Before James had trusted him with the broken soldier. Sterling found Catherine in the garden, planting early seeds. Her hands were dirty. her face flushed with exertion. She looked up as he approached. "I need to show you something," he said, holding out the telegram. She read it, her expression growing grave. "When do you leave?" "I don't know." The words felt like stones in his mouth. "I need to discuss it with the children first." Catherine stood, brushing dirt from her skirt. "Sterling, they're just beginning to trust you. If you leave now, I know." He ran a hand through his hair. "But if I lose everything back east, what kind of father can I be? What can I provide them?" Her eyes flashed. "They don't need your money. They need you. They need you here. Present. Consistent. Exactly what I've been teaching you." Before Sterling could respond, he heard a small gasp. Emma stood at the garden gate, eyes wide with shock. She'd heard everything. "You're leaving?" Her voice broke on the word. "Emma, But she was already running, her dress flying behind her. Sterling started to follow, but Catherine caught his arm. "Let me," she said. Sterling paced the garden while Catherine went after Emma. When she returned an hour later, her face was somber. "Emma's terrified. She remembers 3 years ago, when you said you'd only be gone a few months. That turned into 3 years. To her, this is the same thing happening again." "I haven't decided anything yet." "Haven't you?" Catherine's voice was sharp. "You're already calculating how fast you can get back east, what properties you can salvage, how to minimize losses. You're already half gone." Sterling wanted to argue, but she was right. His mind had already shifted into business mode, solving problems, protecting investments. That evening, James wouldn't look at him during dinner. Emma ate in her room, claiming illness. The tentative warmth they'd built over months evaporated in hours. Sterling sat in his study, the telegram mocking him from the desk. Outside, spring rain began to fall. He could leave tomorrow, save his empire, come back in a few weeks, maybe a month. The children would understand eventually, except they wouldn't. Emma had already shown him that. To them. Leaving meant abandonment. No matter the reason, no matter the intention to return. Catherine appeared in his doorway, still in her damp garden dress. "What's it going to be?" "Sterling, the empire or your children? Because you can't have both. Not right now. Not when trust is this fragile. If I lose everything, you'll still have them. Isn't that enough?" Was it? Sterling looked around his study, at the ledgers showing his wealth, his properties, his success. Then he thought of Emma's smile when he'd made her eggs, James's trust when he'd fixed the soldier, the sound of father instead of Mr. Morrison. He thought of Catherine's hands guiding his through Emma's braid, the way she'd said, "You're doing well." The family forming, fragile and new, in this house. Sterling picked up a pen and began writing to his business partner. "Send someone else. Handle the crisis however you must. Take the financial hit. I'm not coming." He sealed the letter and set it aside for tomorrow's post. Then he went upstairs and knocked on Emma's door. "Emma, I'm not leaving. Whatever comes, I'm staying." Silence. Then, so quietly, "Promise. I promise." He heard her crying softly and wanted desperately to comfort her, but the door stayed closed. Trust, once broken, took time to rebuild. He'd have to prove it with days and weeks and months of staying. Downstairs, Catherine stood at the window, watching the rain. When Sterling appeared, she turned, a question in her eyes. "I sent word to my partner." He said, "I'm staying." Something in her face softened. Not quite a smile, but close. "Good," she said simply. "That's good." The telegram came in mid-May. Sterling's business partner had handled the crisis, but the cost was brutal. They'd lost the Eastern holdings entirely. Investments gone. Properties foreclosed. Sterling's empire had shrunk by more than half. He sat in his study, reading the financial details. Years of work, gone. Wealth he'd sacrificed everything to build, evaporated. The old Sterling would have been devastated, would have raged against the loss. Now he simply felt numb. He'd made his choice. This was the price. He spent the day going through ledgers, calculating what remained. Still wealthy by any measure, but diminished. The land baron reduced to a simple rancher, all those years away from his children, and for what numbers on paper that could vanish overnight. Evening fell. Sterling remained in his study, lamp burning low, surrounded by evidence of his failure. Failure as a father, failure as a businessman. He'd tried to build something that would outlast him, something that would provide for his children forever. Instead, he'd built nothing but absence, a soft knock at the door. He didn't answer, but it opened anyway. Emma peeked in, her face uncertain. "Father, Miss Catherine says you've been in here all day. I have some work to finish." Emma hesitated, then entered fully. She climbed into his lap without asking, settling against his chest the way young children do when seeking comfort. Sterling went still, afraid to move, afraid to break whatever trust had led her here. "Will you read to me?" she asked, holding up a book. "Emma, his voice caught. "I'm not feeling very well tonight. Miss Catherine says reading helps when you're sad." Emma looked up at him with those serious eyes. "Are you sad?" He couldn't lie to her. "Yes." "Then reading will help." James appeared in the doorway, drawn by voices. He saw Emma in Sterling's lap and came closer, leaning against the arm of Sterling's chair. Neither child asked what was wrong. They simply offered their presence. Sterling opened the book. Emma had brought a collection of Western tales. He began to read, his voice rough at first, then steadier. Emma relaxed against him. James's breathing slowed. Halfway through the story, Catherine appeared in the doorway. She took in the scene Sterling reading. Children nestled close. The telegram visible on the desk. Understanding crossed her face. She didn't interrupt. Just stood there, listening, her expression tender. When Sterling finished the story, Emma yawned. "One more." "Tomorrow," Catherine said softly. "Time for bed." The children kissed Sterling goodnight quick. Childish kisses that nevertheless felt like miracles. They followed Catherine upstairs, leaving Sterling alone with his ledgers and losses. But Catherine returned minutes later. She picked up the telegram, read it, then set it down gently. "This is wealth," she said, echoing words she'd spoken before. She gestured to where his children had been, to the book still open on his lap. "Not numbers and ledgers. This. I lost everything." "No." Her voice was firm. "You lost property. Land. Investments. Those are things, they can be replaced. Your children cannot. These months with them, learning to be their father, that's what matters. That's what lasts." Sterling looked at her. This woman who'd saved his family, who'd kept them whole while he was busy destroying himself. Rain fell softly outside. Spring rain, washing winter away. "I don't deserve them," he whispered. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not," Catherine agreed, but gently. "None of us deserve the grace we're given. But here it is anyway. Your children came to you tonight. They saw you hurting and brought you comfort. That's love, Sterling. That's family. That's everything you've been working toward." She moved to leave, then paused at the door. "The empire you lost was built on absence. Maybe it's time to build something different, something smaller but real, something that requires you to stay." After she left, Sterling sat in the darkness, listening to rain, Tomorrow he'd face reduced circumstances, a smaller operation, less wealth to his name. But tonight, his daughter had climbed into his lap seeking comfort. His son had leaned against his chair, offering silent support. He'd lost an empire. But in losing it, he'd found something infinitely more precious. He'd found his way home. June settled into rhythm. Sterling and the children fell into patterns that felt almost natural. Morning breakfast together, afternoons helping with lessons or working around the property, evenings reading or playing simple games. Sterling learned James loved checkers, but hated to lose. Emma could name every wildflower in Montana territory. They both still sought Catherine first for comfort. But occasionally, increasingly, they turned to him. July arrived hot and bright. Catherine's garden exploded with growth tomatoes, beans, lettuce, herbs. She recruited everyone to help with weeding. Gardening teaches patience, she told the children, kneeling in the dirt. You plant seeds, water faithfully. Wait, growth happens slowly. Then one day you look up and there's harvest. Sterling understood she was talking about more than vegetables. That afternoon, they worked together in the garden rows. Emma pulled weeds while James watered. Catherine showed Sterling which plants needed pruning. The work was peaceful, companionable. James wandered toward the fence line, investigating something in the grass. Suddenly he jumped back with a yelp. "Snake!" Emma spun instinctively. "Papa!" she cried out, the word sharp with alarm. Then she froze. Her hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide with shock. She'd called him Papa. The word had come out naturally, unconsciously. Before she could stop it, Sterling's heart stopped. He stood slowly from where he'd been kneeling, hardly daring to breathe. James stared at his sister. Catherine had gone still, her pruning shears forgotten. Emma's face flushed deep red. I'm sorry. I meant mister, I meant father." "Say it again," Sterling said, his voice breaking. He knelt down, bringing himself eye level with his daughter. "Please, say it again." Emma looked at Catherine, seeking permission or guidance. Catherine's eyes were bright with tears, but she nodded encouragingly. "Papa," Emma whispered, testing the word. Sterling's vision blurred. Yes, yes. I'm your papa." "Papa," Emma said again, louder this time, more certain. James edged closer. "Papa," he said, his voice small but clear. Then stronger. "Papa!" Sterling pulled them both into his arms, holding tight while his shoulders shook. They'd called him father for weeks now, that formal distance slowly closing. But Papa, that was different. Papa was intimate. Papa was love. Catherine turned away, giving them privacy, but Sterling saw her wiping her eyes. These children she'd raised, protecting and nurturing through years of his absence, she was giving them to him, trusting him with the family she'd built. "I love you," Sterling told his children, the words he should have said years ago. "I love you both so much. I'm sorry I left. I'm sorry I missed so much, but I'm here now. I'm staying. I promise." Emma pulled back to look at him, her face serious. "You won't leave again, even if business needs you." "Even then, this is my business now." "You are." "Being your father." James hugged him tighter. "Good." They stayed like that in the garden, kneeling in the dirt among growing things, while July's sun beat down warm and bright, a family finding each other, a father coming home. Later, after the children had gone to bed still saying Papa, like learning a new language, Sterling found Catherine on the porch. She sat in the gathering dusk, shelling peas into a bowl. "Thank you," he said, sitting beside her, "for everything, for raising them, for teaching me, for not giving up on us." Catherine's hand stilled. "They're remarkable children. It was easy to love them. You made us a family. You held us together when I was trying to tear us apart." She looked at him then, really looked, and Sterling saw his own feelings reflected back. She loved him. Had maybe loved him for a while now, watching him stumble and learn and grow. "I want you to stay," he said. "Not as governess. I want—" He had to stop. Gather courage. "I want you to marry me. To be their mother officially. To be my wife. Make this permanent. Make this real." Catherine set down the peas. "Are you asking because you love me or because the children need a mother?" "Both." Sterling took her hand. "I love you, Catherine. I love your strength and your wisdom and your infinite capacity for grace. I love who I'm becoming with you beside me. The children need you. Yes, but I need you too. Not to teach me anymore, just to be with me, to build this smaller, better life together." "I've been waiting," Catherine said softly, "for you to come home, truly home. Not just to this house, but to yourself, to who you're meant to be. Have I?" "Yes," she smiled, tears spilling over. "Yes, you have." Sterling kissed her then, gentle and sure, while July stars began to appear overhead. Inside the house, his children slept peacefully, dreaming whatever children dream. Tomorrow they'd tell Emma and James. Tomorrow they'd start planning a wedding. Tonight, he simply sat with the woman he loved, shelling peas in the gathering dark. Home at last. September brought cooler nights and the settling in of family life. The children had accepted Catherine's new role with pure joy. They'd been calling her Mama within a week of the engagement. The wedding had been simple, just them and a few neighbors. In the parlor where Catherine had taught so many lessons. Now autumn painted the landscape gold and copper. Catherine's garden yielded final harvests, squash and carrots and potatoes they'd store for winter. The children helped eagerly, chattering about everything and nothing. Sterling watched his wife, still marveling at that word show James how to pull carrots without breaking them. Watched Emma carefully wrap potatoes in newspaper for storage. His family. His real wealth. "Papa, look." James held up a massive carrot, dirt clinging to orange roots. "Biggest one yet. Well done, son. Son." "Papa," words that came naturally now, without hesitation or pain. The formal distance of last Christmas had dissolved completely. Now Emma ran to him first thing each morning. James sought his help with everything from arithmetic to fixing broken things. They'd found their rhythm breakfast together. Morning lessons, afternoon work, evening stories and prayers. Catherine had stopped being governess, but she still taught, weaving lessons into daily life. Sterling helped now, no longer student but partner. October arrived with harvest moon and early frosts. One evening, they gathered around the dinner table, the same table where Sterling had once sat as a stranger being interviewed. Now Emma and James argued playfully over who should clear dishes. "It's my turn," Emma insisted. "You did it yesterday," James countered. "Children," Catherine said mildly. "You can both help." They grumbled but obeyed, carrying plates to the kitchen while still bickering. Sterling caught Catherine's eye across the table. She smiled, shaking her head at their antics. This chaos, this noise, this beautiful, ordinary life. "Do you remember Christmas Eve?" Sterling asked quietly, "when I arrived?" Catherine's expression sobered. "You looked like a man walking to his own execution." "I was, in a way—" He looked around the warm room lamps burning bright, children's voices from the kitchen. Catherine's shawl hanging on its hook. "I'd built an empire and lost everything that mattered. I came home expecting I don't know what I expected. To be welcomed like a returning hero. Maybe." He smiled ruefully. "Instead, I got what I deserved. The truth of my failure." Emma and James returned, James carrying a book. "Will you read to us?" Papa. Of course. They settled into the parlor. Emma on one side of Sterling, James on the other. Catherine in her chair with mending. Sterling read about cowboys and adventures while fire crackled warm. Halfway through, Emma leaned her head against his shoulder, completely relaxed. James's eyes grew heavy, but he fought sleep to hear the story's end. When Sterling finally closed the book, James yawned hugely. Bedtime. Catherine announced. Do we have to? Emma protested, but she was already yawning too. Yes, Sterling said firmly, but I'll tuck you in. He followed them upstairs, another nightly routine that still felt precious. He kissed Emma's forehead, pulled her quilt up snug, checked that James's toy soldier sat on the bedside table where it belonged, listened to their sleepy prayers. Thank you for Papa, Emma whispered, and for Mama, and for our family. Sterling's throat closed. He managed to whisper, Amen. Downstairs, Catherine waited by the fire. Sterling sank into the chair beside her, taking her hand. I used to measure my worth in acres and cattle, he said. Now I measure it in bedtime prayers and garden harvests and the sound of children arguing over dishes. Better metrics. Catherine agreed, through the window. October moon rose full and bright. The ranch spread out around them, smaller than Sterling's empire at its peak. But more than enough. Enough land, enough cattle, enough wealth to provide for his family comfortably. More importantly, enough time, enough presence, enough love to fill the spaces he'd left empty. Do you know what I treasure most? Sterling asked. What? That moment in the garden. When Emma called me Papa without thinking, that slip, it was worth more than all my holdings combined. It meant I'd finally earned it. Finally became what I should have been all along. Catherine squeezed his hand. You're a good father. Sterling, a good husband. You came home. That's what matters. He thought of that Christmas Eve arrival. The stranger in the foyer. The children who didn't know him. The governess who'd become his salvation. He'd been so lost then. So broken by his own choices. Now he was found. Broken still in some ways, but healing, learning, growing into the man his family needed him to be. I'm home, he said simply. Yes, Catherine agreed, leaning her head against his shoulder. You are outside. Autumn wind rustled through trees, shedding their leaves. Inside, lamps burned warm against the darkness. Upstairs, his children slept peacefully. Beside him, his wife rested quietly. The house that had once felt like a mausoleum now rang with life and love and laughter. Sterling Morrison had once been a land baron who owned half of Montana territory. Now he was simply Papa, husband, family man. And that, he understood at last, was the only empire that truly mattered.